The scanner that you see on the left is not unlike what you might see at a checkout counter in a store. But the one in this picture is much more sophisticated than that. It's got a Wi-Fi connection to another part of the product that's on the back end, which has access to a database. And so the idea is when things come into a warehouse or go out, you scan them with this scanner, and the information about the barcode goes to the back-end system. And the back-end system has databases, and it has access to payroll and human resources and a whole lot of other information that's available to this application. But the reason I'm telling you this story is that the particular scanner that's pictured here was manufactured in China. And one of the electronic components was built by some Chinese hackers. And it contained malware that was embedded in the firmware of the device. The firmware is that software that sits between the applications and the hardware. And this malicious code made it so that when somebody scanned a package and that information went to the back end, it carried a virus with it that infiltrated the systems and sent all the confidential proprietary information back to the Chinese. Now let me tell you about the other scanner pictured here. This is a common printer, fax machine scanner that you could see in a small office. These exist all over the place. These things have to be connected to the internet to work. And so what happened is a group of Russian hackers discovered that this particular scanner, it had a vulnerability that allowed them to get malware on it. And what their malware did was, as each document is being scanned, it would look for words like top secret, confidential, proprietary, and when those existed, would send the entire PDF that was scanned to the Russian hackers. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. Well, actually, I did. One of those stories I made up, and one of them is true. But what's interesting is that if one of those is true, the other one could have been true. And I love making up stories about hackers. So let me tell you two more stories, one of which is true and one of which I made up. So the Cottonmouth 1. The Cottonmouth 1 came out of some documents leaked by Edward Snowden. It was a top secret, highly classified NSA project. And what it was a replacement for the USB dongle on a keyboard. So for example, if the NSA wanted to target somebody, they would swap out the keyboard that they were going to put on their computer or one they already had there with this USB dongle, which would then wirelessly communicate with that computer and send malware onto the computer that would allow them to track what was going on in the computer. Now, they spent $1 million for every 50 of those that they produced. And when Edward Snowden had his leak, this was information that came to the light of day. Now, the USB banana is so sensitive, that's still classified. I can't tell you about that one. Sorry. So everything today is connected. Everything is online. In my house, I've got so many smart devices that I think the devices are smarter than the people now. We have Nest thermostat, we have automatic lights, we have, you name it, we've got it. And is my concern that hackers will be able to exploit the software in these devices to, make it really cold in my house or to flick my lights on and off? I mean, those are not my concerns. That's not what I'm worried about. I am worried that hackers will be able to exploit the vulnerable software in these devices in order to use them as command and control for distributed denial of service attacks that could knock out major networks. And as we get millions and millions more things in our Internet of Things, this is a real concern. Now, we've all seen these fitness trackers that are all the rage. Everybody is tracking their steps and their running and their health and their fitness. What I'm showing you here is a fitness tracker, one of the top models, that had a bug in the software, and it causes the sensors to sample way too much, and it injured this person. And I was thinking, these devices are usually connected to a smartphone that runs them, and smartphones are vulnerable. They have tons of software, millions of lines of code running on the smartphones, and if an attacker can take advantage of that and basically activate a bug in the fitness tracker, they can cause real injury, as we see here. Another device that is in the health and fitness space that I purchased was this blood pressure monitor. I put this thing on my arm, and it's really cool because it doesn't have a controller, doesn't have a screen or a display. You use your iPhone, and then you can see, say start, and you can see your progress, etc. So I put this thing on, and I activated it, and it started squeezing my arm. And it squeezed really, really hard. And I tend to be pretty claustrophobic, and I was starting to wonder if this thing was going to rip my arm off. I mean, it really, really, really hurt. So it didn't rip off my arm, fortunately, but I got a really scary reading. I was supposed to be dead in about 3 minutes based on my blood pressure reading when I did that. Now, the concern, of course, is that if somebody hacks your phone and you've got this thing on your arm, they can injure you physically. Okay, one of the things I like to do is to play games. And I'm going to play a game with you guys. I came up with 4 of the most interesting hacks that I've seen, and I wanted to present them to you, but I thought it would be cool if I added a 5th one that I made up. And this way we'll keep your attention, so you're going to try to guess which of these 5 hacks that I'm going to describe is the fake one. The first one is called the faceplant attack. And what this is there's an electronic skateboard that has a controller that you hold in your hand. It's got a Bluetooth connection. And it's kind of cool. You can go up to 20 miles an hour on this thing, and you can even configure it to go faster, but that's the default maximum speed. And it can go forwards or backwards, etc. So some hackers were able to hack into the skateboard, disable the control from the handheld controller, and automatically, as the thing's moving at 20 miles an hour, switch it into reverse. So the skateboard flies backwards and doesn't stop, and the person plants their face in the ground. Let me describe the second one. This one is really, really cool if it's true. So what you do is you take your phone and you point it at a wall with a room behind that wall, and it sends out a Wi-Fi signal. And then the Wi-Fi signal is reflected back to the phone. And what it does is basically trying to detect motion on the other side of the wall. And so the first thing it does is it measures all the static reflections, and then it measures all of the dynamic reflections, that's somebody moving, and it creates an internal model based on the reflections of the Wi-Fi of what's going on the other side of that wall. So let me show you a demonstration, and you'll see that if this is this is my fake one, I put a lot of work into it. A person is walking around the room here, and you see them taking steps, and you can see the drawing of the model of the motion that's being detected simply by reflecting Wi-Fi from the phone back through a wall. The next one I'm going to describe, so somebody thought it would be a good idea to put Wi-Fi and an operating system on a sniper rifle. Yeah, what could go wrong with that? So we take this sniper rifle, and you can control it from your laptop, and you can enter things like the wind speed, the wind direction, the weight of the bullets, and a whole bunch of other factors. And you set this thing down on a sturdy platform, and then you pull the trigger after you've set your controls, and they say it has accuracy to within a mile, is what the manufacturer says, which is a whole lot more than most snipers can achieve. Well, some security researchers got their hand on this rifle, and they started tinkering with it, and they discovered a vulnerability in the Wi-Fi software on the rifle, and they were able to get root on it and to be able to change settings. And as they played with it, they discovered that, for example, if you said that the bullet weighed, instead of 13 grams, say 72 pounds, you could actually change the trajectory. It wouldn't complain and say, well, a bullet can't weigh 72 pounds. And it would happily make the adjustments in the calculations. So through some trial and error, they were able to get the rifle to actually hit a bullseye, which wasn't the bullseye that they were supposed to be aiming at. And that's depicted here. So the manufacturer was smart enough to make it that you have to physically pull the trigger to fire. So the gun can't be fired from a hacker. But you can change the aim of it, which I think is pretty scary. So number 3 is very, very cool. The idea is, as I'm speaking, and whenever you talk, vibrations are created, right? And so let's put a bag of potato chips in a room, an empty bag of potato chips, and somebody will be speaking, and their voice will vibrate. And so you could possibly perceive the vibrations on that bag and figure out, through some mathematical calculations, what was the sound, what was being said. Imagine the ability to spy on people by being able to measure vibrations of things near them on video. And so here I'm going to show you an original sound that was created in a soundproof room with a video camera pointed at it.
Mary had a little lamb whose fleece was white as snow. And everywhere that Mary went, that lamb was sure to go.
Okay, now that bag of potato chips that was near that sound has been videotaped, and some back-end processing occurred, and it produced this. Pretty cool stuff. Researchers in Israel were able to figure out the secret encryption key on a laptop that was performing computations simply by touching the laptop. The way this worked is the person would be hooked up to some equipment that could measure the flow of electricity through their body. They touch the computer, and apparently, as you're performing RSA encryption operations, the amount of electricity that will conduct through you for a 0 bit in the key will be something, and for a 1 will be different. It's actually a lot more complicated than that, but they're able to recover the entire key by touching the computer that's performing the encryption. But they were also able to do it by simply measuring the power draw that the computer had without even touching the computer. If they had access to the power the computer was drawing, they can tell you what the key is. And so, to review, we have faceplant on the skateboard, Wi-Fi through the walls, audio from video, the bag of potato chips, cryptographic keys by touching the computer, and hacking a sniper rifle. So by show of hands, who thinks faceplant was my plant? Oh, y'all believe that's real? Okay, how about Wi-Fi through walls? Okay, we got a bunch of hands. Audio from video? Some more hands, quite a few. Cryptographic keys from touching? I think we have a favorite. And hacking the sniper rifle. Okay, well, all of them got some votes. So let me reveal the secret. I lied. They all are true. But I did make up the story of the copier scanner fax and the warehouse inventory scanner with pre-installed malware from China is a true story. And you think about it, that scanner doesn't have to be hacked. It's born hacked, right? The vendor of that device doesn't even know that this thing is putting a virus on people's systems. So let me talk about a couple of more interesting Internet of Things hacks. One of them is Samsung's new smart fridge, okay? Samsung realized that in order to know what's on your calendar, people don't want to have to pull out their phone or go look on their computer. They can just look on their fridge. And so they designed a smart fridge that you could lock into with your Google credentials and see your calendar right there on your fridge. The only problem is the people that built that may not have had a lot of security training, and they don't validate the SSL certificates. For those of you that are technical, you know what that means. For those of you that are not technical, trust me, that means bad stuff will happen. And what you can do is, if the certificates aren't validated, you can create a man-in-the-middle attack which will allow somebody to get the person's Gmail email, all the history of all of their email, and to log into their Gmail account, basically, because they have a smart fridge. The last thing I'm going to tell you about is self-driving cars. We know that self-driving cars are coming. Some of us are happy about it, some of us aren't, but they're coming. And one of the ways that self-driving cars work is they sense everything around them. So they send laser pulses out, and they get reflections back, and they create a 3D model of the world around them. Well, what a hacker was able to do, a researcher, is to fool the laser sensor and send laser pulses using $60 worth of equipment to change the 3D model of a car. So by doing that, you could make a car have to suddenly veer off the road because it thinks it's about to hit someone or something like that. And this is where I'm going to get to what I think are the important points to take out of this talk, which is, imagine you're building a self-driving car and you're a security guy and you know a lot about security. You're going to build the thing in such a way that you'll say, well, maybe we'll share 3D models across cars, and all of a sudden a laser pulse attack doesn't work. We're going to think about security from the very beginning, okay? They did that with the rifle. They don't let you fire the rifle. But many of the other things, if you just thought about security from the beginning, you could have prevented a lot of these vulnerabilities. Finally, I'll close with a quote that I saw on the internet. I don't know who said it, but I believe it's a good idea. Just because you can connect something to the internet does not mean that you should. Thank you very much.